It was a cold October evening when Emily Bennett first heard about Hollow Ridge, a secluded area on the outskirts of town, shrouded in fog and rumors. Known for its dense forest and the eerie ruins of a once grand mansion, it had a dark reputation. Locals whispered stories of people who had entered the forest, but never returned. Their screams occasionally heard echoing through the trees. Emily was a true crime enthusiast and part-time podcaster. Always on the hunt for unsolved mysteries, she was instantly drawn to the tale of Hollow Ridge. What intrigued her the most was the unsolved case of the McAllister family. In 1987, the entire family of 5 disappeared without a trace from their mansion, leaving behind a dining table set for dinner, the food untouched and cold. The only clue was a single word carved into the dining room wall: repent. Ignoring warnings from friends and locals, Emily decided to investigate the mystery herself. Armed with her recorder, flashlight, and a sense of determination, she ventured into the forest on Halloween night. The deeper she went, the darker it became. The trees seemed to close in, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Emily tried to stay calm, but the silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of her boots on the damp leaves. Then she saw it, the ruins of the McAllister mansion, its charred skeleton silhouetted against the moonlight. As she stepped inside, the air grew colder. Her flashlight flickered, casting distorted shadows on the crumbling walls. She began to explore, narrating her findings into the recorder. The dining room was still intact, the long table covered in dust but eerily preserved. The word repent was still etched into the wall, its letters jagged and desperate. Suddenly the temperature dropped further, and the hairs on her neck stood on end. A faint whisper echoed through the room. Emily froze, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The whisper grew louder, transforming into a chorus of anguished voices. Her flashlight died completely, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as she fumbled for her phone, its dim light barely piercing the blackness. In the glow, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Handprints appearing on the dusty table, one by one, as if unseen figures were sitting down for dinner. Then she felt it, a cold, bony hand gripping her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispers turned into screams, deafening and relentless. Emily ran, her recorder falling to the ground as she bolted out of the mansion and into the forest. She didn't stop until she reached her car, her heart pounding like a drum. When she returned home, Emily tried to convince herself it was her imagination. But the scratches on her shoulder told a different story. She uploaded the recording from her dropped device, hoping to find evidence of what she experienced. The audio was filled with static, but in the background she heard the whispers clearly. "You shouldn't have come." And then, at the very end, a voice spoke directly into the microphone, a deep, guttural tone that sent shivers down her spine. "Repent." Emily never returned to Hollow Ridge, but she wasn't the same after that night. Friends noticed her growing paranoia, the way she would glance over her shoulder as if expecting to see someone or something behind her. And then one day, Emily disappeared, leaving behind her laptop, a half-finished podcast script, and a single word scrawled on her living room wall: repent. To this day, no one knows what happened to Emily Bennett. But on cold, quiet nights, some say you can hear her voice in the woods of Hollow Ridge, whispering, begging for the truth to be uncovered. On the night of December 24th, 1945, in a small town in West Virginia, an event occurred that would puzzle investigators and haunt a family for years to come. A tragic fire claimed the lives of 5 young children, or did it? The Sauter family was looking forward to a cozy Christmas evening. George and Jenny Sauter had 10 children, and the house was filled with joy and laughter. But in the early hours of Christmas Day, everything would change. Around 1 a.m., a fire broke out in the Sauter home. The flames spread quickly, and by the time the fire department arrived, the house had been reduced to ashes. But when the smoke cleared, there was no sign of the 5 children. Despite the fire being intense, there were no remains of the children found. How could this be? Some speculated it was a case of foul play or even kidnapping. The Sauters refused to believe their children had perished in the flames and began their own investigation. Witnesses reported seeing strange figures near the house on the night of the fire. Others claimed they had seen the children alive after the incident. Yet the mystery deepened as the case remained unsolved. The case of the Sauter children remains one of America's greatest mysteries. Were the children kidnapped? Did they perish in the fire? The questions remain unanswered, and the story lives on as a haunting reminder of what we may never truly know. One witness claimed to have seen the children peering from a car driving away from the house. Others said they saw them in different towns, including at a hotel weeks later. Despite these reports, none were confirmed. The Sauters believed their children had been abducted due to George's political views. Could his outspoken stance against Mussolini have made the family a target? Or was it a personal vendetta? Some speculated about organized crime involvement, but no concrete evidence surfaced. The Sauters never stopped searching. They put up billboards and distributed flyers offering a reward for information. Though they passed away without answers, their surviving children continue the quest for the truth. In a small town, near the edge of a forgotten forest, stood an old house. A house with many rumors surrounding it. People said it was cursed. They said anyone who moved in there either disappeared or went mad. Nadim and Sarah didn't believe in these stories. They moved into the house with their young son, Ahmed, hoping for a fresh start. At first, everything seemed normal. The house was old, but charming, peaceful even. But the peace didn't last long. One evening, as they were sorting through some old items in the basement, young Ahmed found something strange. It was an old mirror covered in dust, a mirror that looked much older than anything in the house. Nadim, eager to make the house feel like home, decided to hang the mirror on the wall. Sarah, however, wasn't so sure. She felt an unsettling feeling whenever she looked at it, but she pushed the thought away, believing it was just her imagination. That night, something strange happened. Sarah woke up in the middle of the night and saw Nadim standing near the mirror, smiling at her. But when she looked directly at him, he was in bed, fast asleep. Sarah told Nadim, but he dismissed it as nothing more than a dream. But the odd occurrences didn't stop there. Strange noises filled the house at night. Doors creaked open on their own, and soft whispers echoed through the empty halls. But every time Sarah mentioned it, Nadim laughed it off, assuring her it was just the house settling. Days passed, and young Ahmed's behavior began to change. He became more withdrawn, more distant. One day he said something that made Sarah's heart race. He said, "Mama, they talk to me. They're in the mirror." Now Sarah couldn't ignore it any longer. She told Nadim, but he shrugged it off as childish imagination. However, one night, Sarah's fear grew deeper when Ahmed said, "Mama, I'm going with them." They're taking me somewhere. That's when Sarah knew something was terribly wrong. She rushed to the mirror, calling out for Ahmed, but when she looked inside, his reflection was gone. Instead, there was a dark, shifting shadow that seemed to move on its own. Panic set in. Nadim, still trying to make sense of it all, searched through the house and found an old diary hidden behind the mirror. It read, "This mirror is a doorway, a gateway to another world. Once you enter, you can never leave." That's when it hit Nadim. The mirror wasn't just reflecting their lives. It was changing them, pulling them into something darker. One night, in the dead of night, they both stood before the mirror, desperate to save their son. They called his name, hoping he would return. But instead, something worse happened. A dark hand reached out from the mirror and grabbed Nadim, pulling him into it. "No, Nadim, don't go," Sarah screamed, but the mirror seemed to swallow him whole. His reflection in the mirror twisted, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "It's too late, Sarah. I'm not coming back." In a panic, Sarah tried to shatter the mirror, but as she hit it, everything went silent. The house, the people, and the world they knew faded away. She was left alone, standing in an empty house with no sign of Nadim or Ahmed. The mirror, now just a regular mirror, still hung on the wall, reflecting nothing. The doorway to another world had closed. Or maybe it had never opened at all. Sarah was never seen again. No one ever spoke of the house. The mirror was gone, or maybe it was always there. And some say if you look into any old mirror long enough, you might see something else.